Two nations, one historic partnership that spiraled into a global economic war. What started as tariff war has now escalated into a full-scale struggle over technology, power, and dominance over the modern world. In this conflict, there are no missiles, no tanks, no soldiers, just microchips, tariffs, and supply chains. But how long will that last? As the Singapore Prime Minister warned,
the era of rules-based globalization and free trade is over. Trade wars escalated into armed conflict and eventually the Second World War.
The last time global trade broke down like this, the consequences were catastrophic. In 2025, the warning signs are clearly evident. Markets are reeling, alliances are shifting, and history feels like it's repeating itself. This is the story of the US-China trade war, how it began, how it transformed, and what it means for our future. April 2nd, 2025. The world froze. Trump was back. With a single declaration, Liberation Day, he unleashed a seismic shock on the global economy. A sweeping wave of reciprocal tariffs hit over 90 countries, but one target stood out: China. An additional 34% tariff piled onto existing levies, pushing total duties on Chinese imports to a brutal 54% in just 1 week. Markets reeled. On April 3rd and 4th, traders on Wall Street watched in disbelief as the numbers tanked. It was chaos, but what exactly was happening? Tariffs, essentially taxes on foreign goods, are designed to protect local industries or pressure other countries into making trade deals. However, Trump insisted it was about correcting the trade deficit, a move to force China's hand after decades of what he called unfair economic warfare. But Beijing wasn't having it. Xi Jinping made it clear China would strike back. And they did. Just 2 days after Trump's announcement, China announced its own 34% tariffs on all American goods. Then, things escalated, and it escalated fast. By April 9th, Trump upped the ante. He announced he would raise those import taxes to an even more devastating 125%, effective immediately on April 10th. But then, the White House clarified that the previously reported 125% tariff was actually 145% when factoring in Trump's prior 20% fentanyl tariffs on Chinese goods. The pressure continued to mount. China wasn't having any of that. They raised the stakes, 84% tariffs on US products. And by April 11th, Beijing raised a 125% tariff wall against American exports. But the real kicker came on April 16th. A new fact sheet from the White House revealed a chilling development. China now faced up to a staggering 245% tariff on imports to the United States as a result of its retaliatory actions. Now, the world's two largest economies had locked horns once again. A familiar rivalry, but this time, the stakes were even higher. American farmers, tech giants, blue-collar workers, every corner of the US economy braced for impact as the tariff storm spiraled. And as global leaders scrambled to contain the fallout, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about trade. This was Cold War 2.0, and the first shots had already been fired. But this isn't just between these two countries anymore. The impact is spreading, affecting economies well beyond their borders. In Southeast Asia, a growing fear is taking root. A tsunami of cheap Chinese goods is crashing in. As America slaps tariffs on Chinese exports, those same goods, once bound for American shelves, are now flooding new markets. Singapore's Prime Minister warns of an aggressive form of protectionism, one that could strangle small, open economies, just like those in Southeast Asia. In Indonesia, the textile industry is already feeling the heat. The flood of low-cost Chinese fabric is overwhelming local businesses. Factories are shutting down in droves. Between 2023 and 2024, 60 companies went under, and over 250,000 workers found themselves without jobs. Meanwhile, Indonesian textile exports, once a staple in markets like the US and Europe, are now being crushed by the competition. In Malaysia, the damage is even more severe. The solar panel manufacturing sector, once a shining example of Chinese investment, has hit a wall. Tariffs have wrecked the flow of solar technology intended for the American market. Companies like Jinko Solar Co., Risen Energy Co. and JA Solar Technology Co. have pulled out, as U.S. tariff hikes in 2024 squeezed margins. Now the situation is even grimmer. Experts warn that tariffs as high as 271% on solar imports from Southeast Asia could kill the entire industry there. In the U.S., the effects are hitting closer to home. U.S. farmers once dependent on Chinese markets now struggle as China imposes retaliatory tariffs on key American exports like soybeans, pork, beef, wheat, and corn. After years of volatility and a slow recovery from COVID, this new setback hits hard. Other industries aren't getting a free pass either. The auto industry faces higher costs due to interrupted parts imports. U.S. solar companies see installation costs rise as access to Chinese panels is restricted. Consumers are also feeling the pinch. A study from Goldman Sachs back in May 2019 showed that the prices of goods subjected to tariffs have risen sharply, far more than untaxed items. American families already dealing with high costs of living are now bracing for even higher prices on basics like food, electronics, and clothing. That cheap t-shirt from Shein or the budget-friendly finds on Temu, they're going to be pricier. Small businesses are also struggling. Sellers on Amazon and Etsy are at the breaking point, battling not just the rising costs, but the emotional toll of an unpredictable future. History has a way of repeating itself. Today's trade wars echo past conflicts, with tariffs and protectionism reminding us of their lasting consequences. Take the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, for example. The United States, facing a crumbling global economy, imposed steep tariffs on imported goods. The goal? To shield American industries from foreign competition. But things didn't go as planned. Other countries retaliated with their own tariffs, stopping global trade and making the Great Depression worse. The price of imported goods shot up, becoming too expensive for most people, and exports dropped. This led to bank failures, especially in farming areas. And the lesson was clear. Economies are too interconnected, and protectionism only wounds us all. More recently, the Prime Minister of Singapore, Lawrence Wong, raised an unsettling red flag. He connected today's trade wars to something much darker, an escalating spiral that could lead to conflict, not just economic pain. He warned that breaking down global trade rules for protectionist measures might lead to war. And this isn't just a theory. History shows how unchecked economic rivalries often lead to bigger conflicts. While tariffs and trade wars dominate headlines, a deeper US-China battle rages silently in cyberspace. The United States has long accused China of engaging in widespread cyber espionage and intellectual property theft. According to the FBI, American businesses lose between $225 to $600 billion each year due to counterfeit goods, pirated software, and stolen trade secrets. A large part of this is linked to China. And these aren't just random cases. They're part of a broader, organized effort. Over the last decade, Chinese state-linked hackers have targeted everything from advanced manufacturing blueprints and pharmaceutical formulas to defense technology and AI systems. One major hack involved stealing plans for a supersonic missile, while others revealed long-term breaches into top US companies and universities. In 2018, Trump administration used these issues as the main reason for imposing heavy tariffs on China, invoking Section 301 of the Trade Act. Chinese companies like Huawei, ZTE, DJI, and BGI Genomics have faced sanctions or restrictions from the US. The reason being that these companies might be used by the Chinese government to steal sensitive information. TikTok's rapid growth in the US also raised alarms, leading to investigations and discussions about either banning the app or forcing its sale to an American company. This is not about stealing ideas or data anymore. It's about controlling the future. As the US-China trade war rages on, one thing has become clear: the old rules no longer apply. What began with targeted tariffs has now ballooned into a web of sanctions, tech bans, investment restrictions, and countermeasures that go far beyond US and Chinese borders. Nations are no longer just choosing trading partners. They're being forced to choose sides in a growing geopolitical divide. Global institutions have had a hard time keeping up. In 2020, the World Trade Organization, WTO, decided that Trump's tariffs on China broke international trade rules. But the US ignored this decision, and the WTO didn't have the power to enforce. America even called the WTO completely inadequate after it criticized the tariffs. Since then, the WTO's credibility has continued to weaken. And now, recent events have gone way beyond what the WTO can control. This breakdown of trust and global cooperation has led to a rise in economic nationalism, where countries prioritize their own interests over global stability. This has caused more division, uncertainty, and instability in the world economy, something economists are now calling weaponized interdependence. Within this volatile environment, the motives behind US actions have become increasingly debated. Some people believe Trump's tough policies are driven by real concerns about unfair trade practices and the decline of American industries. Others think it's more about manipulating the stock market, political posturing, or trying to slow down a rising competitor. And that's how China sees it. To them, this US strategy is an effort to hold China back, disguised as a focus on fair trade. They believe it's really about stopping China's rise in technology while politicians continue to blame each other. The effects are clear. Global supply chains are changed for good. Alliances are becoming more about short-term deals and less about trust. Even America's closest allies are beginning to adjust their strategies, deepening economic ties with China to safeguard their own interests, all while subtly aligning with US strategic goals. The world order is no longer a simple choice between two powers. It's increasingly multipolar, but also unstable. Now the danger isn't just economic. We're witnessing the erosion of global trust, the rise of protectionist blocs, and a dangerous shift toward normalized confrontation. These are the very forces that sparked the tensions leading to World War II. And the longer this trade war drags on, the harder it becomes to reverse the damage. Decoupling becomes permanent, retaliation becomes policy, and the world slips further into division. The future remains unwritten, but history doesn't offer much hope. If things don't change, who's to say this isn't the path that leads us to something even worse? Maybe even World War III. The US-China trade war has already reshaped global economics, but the biggest battles may still be ahead. At the heart of it all lies Taiwan, the epicenter of global semiconductor production. Companies like TSMC manufacture over 90% of the world's most advanced chips that power everything from smartphones to military systems. Any disruption, whether by conflict or blockade, would send shockwaves through the global economy. Both Washington and Beijing understand this, which is why Taiwan isn't just a geopolitical flashpoint. It's a strategic vulnerability. But beyond semiconductors, new fronts are emerging. Artificial intelligence is becoming the next battlefield. When Chinese AI firm DeepSeek revealed a powerful new language model, one that rivals top US AI models at a fraction of the cost, markets took notice. Wall Street felt the hit. The S&P 500 fell 1.5%, with Nvidia dropping 16.9%. Big tech followed, pulling the Nasdaq down 3.1%, its worst day in over a month. So the winner of the AI race may not just dominate innovation, it could shape global governance and online standards. Energy and resources are also in play. The US and China are racing to secure supply chains for critical minerals needed for EVs, batteries, and green infrastructure. China's grip on the global rare earth market is undeniable. It mines 61% of the world's rare earths. But the real leverage doesn't come from what's dug up, it's in the processing. Within its factories and laboratories, China holds a jaw-dropping 92% of the global output. The West is now scrambling to diversify, but this shift won't happen overnight. It will require significant investment, and even then, there's no guarantee it can be fully realized. Then comes finance. China is pushing its digital yuan to reduce reliance on US-controlled payment systems like SWIFT. Meanwhile, China and Russia are pushing to move away from the US dollar by trading in their own currencies and forming financial partnerships outside of America's influence. If this movement grows, it could eventually threaten the dollar's position as the world's main currency, shaking up America's financial power. So unless something changes, the US-China conflict could reshape not only our economy, but the entire global system for years to come. In light of this, it's clear this is no longer just a trade war. It's tariffs, cyber attacks, tech bans, and global realignment. The stakes are massive. The risks are real. So the question is, are we watching the start of Cold War 2.0? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe for more deep dives like this one.